everybody. Happy New Year. So glad that you're here. Hope you're having a great start to your day, your week, and your year. All right. So today we're going to talk about the top 5 most fun ways to practice guitar for lazy guitar players. Okay. So if that's you, you're in the right spot. If that's not you, if you're thinking, I'm not lazy, I pick up my guitar every day, no laziness here, no problem at all. This stuff that we're going to share with you today will still apply to you as well. We just thought we'd have a little fun in getting things started off with the title Top 5 Things or Ways to Practice for Lazy Guitar Players. And hopefully you'll be a little less lazy if you are lazy, if you consider yourself that. Anyway, today I thought I would bring in a very special guest, a guy I've known for a long, long time now. Okay, the expert on guitar practice, and that is Mike Philippov. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hello, Tom Hess. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
All right, awesome, Mike. So, before we start, guys, let us know who in the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're from. And as we go, as you hear Mike talking or myself talking, if you have questions that come up, ask us in the chat. We will go through as many questions live as we have the time for, either as we go or more likely towards the end. That I'll leave that kind of up to Mike, I guess. But the point is, ask questions, and we will do our best to answer them in the time that we have. So, Mike, you know, you got students, and I've got students, and people we know, and some of them are really disciplined and really, have strict regimen practice schedules. Other people are just kind of playing whenever, and they have flashes of inspiration or self-discipline. And then other times they're just eating potato chips on the couch. I'm not sure what's going on over there. But the point is, people are all over the place. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And what tips do you have? We talked 5 ways to make practicing fun for people who, I don't know, just struggle with that a little bit.
Sure. Yes, I'll be glad to. So the first thing about laziness is I don't really have a set of ways that let's say I have 2 students. One is so-called lazy. The other one is so-called not lazy. I don't have necessarily like 10 ways where I would prescribe to the lazy student to practice a certain way, then to the non-lazy person, 10 different ways. I don't think of it like that. What I think about is when I have a student, I ask myself, how do I get the most out of them and help them get whatever it is that the goals that they want to achieve? How do I help them get there in the fastest way possible? And obviously, being lazy isn't conducive to that. So my first goal is to get somebody to be less lazy as they think about practicing. And the best way I found to do that is I often tell my students this little story. There's this guy who's still alive. He's probably in his late 70s now. French dude, Philippe Petit. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. When he was like in his early 20s, he flew over from France to New York City. He rigged a high wire between the newly built at the time World Trade Center towers, the Twin Towers, and he walked on that high wire for 45 minutes before turning himself in to the cops. And afterwards, of course, he was arrested, and the reporters were trying to interview him, and they were asking him, what made you do such a crazy thing? And he just shrugged and said, I don't know. I see 3 oranges and I juggle. I see 2 towers and I walk. So to say it in plain English, he was basically saying, I do this stuff because this is who I am. And the lesson here is when you can see playing guitar and practicing guitar and being a musician as part of who you are as a person, practicing starts to take very little or no discipline really at all. And if you think about it, we all have things in our life that are just non-negotiable. Doesn't matter how many responsibilities you have, what do you got going on at work, family stuff, certain things you just do. Like you always find time to take a shower. If you got a dog, you always find time to walk the dog. If you got kids, you always got time to check their homework. Well, hopefully. And there's no reason why you couldn't make practicing guitar 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, whatever is realistic, one of those non-negotiable things. And that is really the first thing. How you do that is kind of different to every person. There's ways I would approach, giving advice to a specific person. How do you make that shift as far as making guitar playing part of their identity, as it were? But in broad strokes, that is the first piece of advice. When you see practicing as part of guitar playing as part of who you are, practicing becomes just something you do as being that type of person. And when you make that shift, you start getting satisfaction out of practicing that goes beyond just playing faster or cleaner or playing better solos or reaching your goals. You get satisfaction out of practicing, same way as people who go to the gym and lift weights get satisfaction out of that process, even if you don't hit a PR every single time you go to the gym, which you don't if you've been doing this long enough. And so that's really the first thing. So Tom Hess, you have a lot of students obviously as well. Have you found that sort of thinking to be helpful as far as coaching students?
Yeah, definitely. What you said about how you see yourself, your identity, really makes a big difference. It's the difference between I own a guitar, I play guitar, I'm a guitar player, and I'm a musician. Those are different levels of involvement with a guitar. Okay, the guy who's got a guitar sitting under his bed or in his closet or in the basement or whatever, let's call that level 0.1, very low level. Then there's a guy who takes the guitar out occasionally, bangs around on it, maybe tunes the thing, bangs out some AC/DC songs or whatever it is that he likes, and plays occasionally. That's level 0.5 or whatever. Then there's the guy who plays regularly or practices, or just playing more often. That's the next higher level. Then there's the guy who takes lessons, who actually goes through the process of learning and developing as well as practicing. It's not just playing the same things over and over again. That's a substantially higher level. Then, as you said, there are people that they don't have to make themselves practice. It doesn't require any discipline to pick up the guitar and practice it to try to improve, because you only really need discipline to get yourself to do things that you don't feel like doing in that moment, right? I mean, if you're hungry and you eat, it doesn't require much discipline to pick up the fork and eat. It might require a little discipline to eat vegetables if you're not big on vegetables and you'd rather be eating cake. That might take a little bit of discipline. But anything that is fun or pleasurable requires no discipline. And this is important because I think that sometimes players or students look at other people who practice or take lessons or do training, or they are pretty serious about being consistent. They look at them and think, oh, they're so disciplined, and I can't be like that because I'm a lazy fat slob and I'm not disciplined. Well, it's not that they're disciplined and you're not. I mean, that could be the case. They could be forcing themselves to do this unpleasurable thing they don't want to do. That's possible. But more than likely, they have they have learned to enjoy that process, even if they're not yet anywhere near the skill level or musical level that they would like to be. They're on the path. They know that they will someday reach the level they want to be, and the process is enjoyable. There's no discipline required if you can simply get yourself to like it. Now, if you don't like it, well, now discipline, or at the very least habit, is what's required to drive forward and make sure that the actions happen. So if you identify as I am a musician, this is what I do, this is who I am, no discipline is required. You do it, like you take a shower or brush your teeth or whatever. You're on autopilot because this is who I am. This is what I do. I do this. I am this. And that's true with guitar playing. It's true with financial things, financial goals, or things in people's careers, or if they're a business owner, or if they're trying to build wealth, or they do things. People do things naturally that is consistent with how they see themselves, or at least how they would like to see themselves. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Great insights there, Tom Hess. And so, one thing that I found also from my experience, I often tell my students this, going back to getting satisfaction out of practicing beyond just getting better, is I often saw myself while practicing as like Rocky training for a world championship fight. I still am, a big fan of the Rocky movies and really all those types of martial arts movies and stuff. And so I never was into martial arts, but when I was practicing, I sort of saw myself, the act of getting better and mastering my craft as that as part of my self-image, on top of also becoming a musician and a better guitar player. And so, just to kind of wrap up that point about the self-image, and the next point I have, the next piece of advice building off of that, is getting good at practicing. Because a lot of times people think of practicing as something you just do as kind of busy work, and everybody practices the same amount. And I think that's also where the question of how much time does it take to get good at guitar oftentimes comes from, because many people assume that when John Petrucci practices or Yngwie Malmsteen practices and some, John Smith, who is a complete beginner, doesn't know anything, practices, their hour of practice and Petrucci's hour of practice is exactly the same in terms of effectiveness. Well, it's not. And I'm not even talking about the difference in skill level. I'm talking about the level of efficiency and effectiveness people are able to put into practicing. So it's different between getting good at practicing and getting good at playing guitar are two different things. Getting good at practicing is what allows you to get good at playing guitar. And your level of effectiveness at practicing speeds up or slows down the process of getting good at playing guitar. And going back to what Tom Hess mentioned about enjoying the process, when you are good at practicing, you see results more often, and you obviously want to do it more because it's inspiring to feel yourself achieving something you couldn't do before. And it's inspiring when other people see you play and they comment on, hey, dude, you're getting really good. Like, this is awesome. And you feel good about that. So that inspires you to practice more. And then laziness just evaporates. Same way as playing a video game. When you're new to playing a video game, you get killed all the time if it's like a shooter video game or something. But then you get good and you start killing all the enemies and whatever the case is. Then you want to play it more often because you're better at it. It's the same kind of a thing. And when great players practiced a lot, of course, I can't speak for everybody, but we can make a general assumption that a lot of the great players, especially those who were self-taught, meaning in the sense that they didn't have formal lessons, that they paid somebody to teach them stuff, we could assume that they were naturally talented in the sense that when they practiced, they just naturally figured out a lot of the things, how to do things correctly, how to hold the pick correctly, how to relax excessive tension, how to get their hands in sync, how to play in time, how to have good vibrato, all those things. They figured out a lot of these things by instinct. They got lucky in that sense. And that is what also then drove them to practice more. So them practicing more was the effect of them being good at practicing, whether through being taught by someone or through natural talent, rather than through a lot of discipline. So I make obviously my whole channel and everything I teach is all about how to practice better, because I obviously believe that practicing is its own skill set. So when I have a student who is not practicing as much as they tell me that they want, or they're not practicing as much as would be necessary to reach the goal they tell me that they have. My job is obviously make them as good as possible at practicing, and it can be there's lots of different tactical ways that can take place. For instance, if you're practicing some long scale sequence in a solo that's, I don't know, 80 notes or something, and you have trouble with the middle 10 of those, just a really, really simple way you could make your practicing more efficient and more effective is to not practice all 80 notes, but isolate the chunk around the 10 notes that you're struggling with. And per minute of practice time, you're going to be able to focus in on the hard part better. With more intensity, you'll get more repetitions in of the hard part, and you will get more out of that minute of practice time. This is a very, very simple example to show that we have two different guitar players. One guy practices the scale sequence with all the notes, the ones he can play well and the ones he can't. And the other guy focuses on the harder parts more. Well, the second guy is obviously going to improve faster. Another way is to simply ask better problem solving questions. Oftentimes, when I have students playing something in front of me, I would just watch them for like a minute or two. And it's obvious to me just from seeing them play that they're not giving themselves any feedback on what they are playing. They're playing something and it's not quite as clean as they'd like it to be. So they just play it again. It's still not clean. They play it again. Still not clean. They play it again. So I stopped them and asked them, okay, it's not clean. And I know you know that it's not clean. What do you think is causing this to not be clean? Just asking that question and sitting there and pondering that and playing back in your mind the repetitions you're doing is going to do wonders for getting your brain engaged in the process instead of just mindlessly going through the motions and wasting a ton of time just doing a bunch of busy work with your fingers, but not getting to the root of what the problem is. So doing that versus not doing that is going to make a difference in terms of how effective your practicing is and how much progress you're able to squeeze out of your practice time. So Tom Hess, what do you think about that? What do you have any thoughts or comments on this?
Well, you said a lot of great things there, and I want to touch on one of them that you mentioned sort of towards the end, and that is sometimes when students practice, flaws that they are making, either they don't realize are happening, or they are capable of realizing it, but it doesn't bother them. So I've got a couple of students right now that I have in my mind. I won't mention their names, that are on exact opposite ends of this spectrum. So one guy, when he practices or plays, he makes mistakes, which is okay. That's not a problem because we're here to fix those mistakes. But the mistakes don't bother him. I mean, he's aware that some things aren't clean. He's aware that the articulation isn't consistently good. He's aware that strings bleed together or ring out when they're not supposed to, that some notes are louder than others or whatever. But none of that stuff bothers him. And because it doesn't bother him, it's really hard for me to get him to fix those things because he's not annoyed enough by those flaws. So my first objective for him is to get him to be annoyed, to be bothered by the slop, that's the out of time, the sloppiness, the noises. I want him to be frustrated and annoyed because that's what's going to drive the desire to want to fix it. Now, I've got someone else I have in mind who's on the exact opposite end. He is so annoyed with every teeny tiny micro little flaw that he doesn't want to do or touch or practice anything else until he nails down this little specific, and he gets like really crazy, super focused, targeted on that. And he lets everything else that he should be practicing sit because he's trying to master everything in a linear way. First, I'll master this. And then after 6 weeks, I'll master that. And then after 2 months more, I'll master. He's never going to become a great player with that line of thinking. So on both ends, it's a problem for different reasons. We want to be annoyed about things that we struggle with because that's going to direct us towards wanting to fix them, knowing what to fix and why we want to fix it. So we can not be annoyed anymore once we fix it. But we don't want to be so laser focused all the time on only that we don't think about practicing timing or phrasing or ear training or anything else, because we got strict tunnel vision all the time. So focus is important. It's good to spend some time isolating things and perfecting them, but not one thing all the time for 3 weeks. That's nuts. That is insane. That will make you hate practicing guitar. I would hate to do that if that's all I did. So maybe you can speak a little bit to that as well. I mean, I'm sure you've had people on both ends, and it's hard to help either side, but for very different reasons.
Yes, absolutely. And one Swiss Army knife of guitar practice techniques that I teach to all my students is the idea of focus rotation, which kind of builds off of the topic you were just talking about, Tom Hess, because oftentimes students, and really not just, I mean, I am guilty of that as well. We all tend to gravitate towards one thing that we either want to practice more, or the one thing that bothers us the most, and ignore other things. And so focus rotation is one way um, to combat this, and to also get so immersed into practicing that time just disappears. So if you don't know what focus rotation is, those who are listening, it's really simple concept. You make a list of the things you need to focus on, and if you don't know what things you need to focus on, you can either just guess, or better yet, ask somebody to give you feedback on your playing, hopefully an experienced teacher, so that you have a list of things that you know is going to move your playing forward. So you make a list, could be 3 things, could be 6 things. Don't want to make the list too long, but 4 or 5 or 6 things is usually the sweet spot. And then every so often, you just simply rotate your focus from one thing to the next. It could be your picking hand for a couple of minutes, then your fretting hand for a couple of minutes, then your phrasing for another couple of minutes, then string noise control, then timing, then connecting the thing you're practicing with something else to build the fluency between those 2 areas. And this way, you practice for, you can easily practice for 45 minutes, an hour, and not even notice it. You're going to look at your phone or at your watch and be like, "Well, where did the time go?" Well, the time just disappears when you practice this way. Tom Hess, did you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I wanted to just clarify. I'm drawing a picture to show everybody just in a moment, but I want to clarify, because when you say pick 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you need to improve on, I think some people will hear that and think, "Oh, you mean like chords and like blues licks
Oh, yes.
and a
I did
scale?"
not make that clear. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's clarify that, and
Yeah.
then I'll show the picture of what to add
Yeah.
to what you're gonna
Yeah.
say.
I meant you're practicing a singular thing. Let's say a scale sequence or a lick in a solo. So that's either of those, a scale sequence or a lick in a solo, or a chord change or riff of some kind, a singular practice item. And then within that item, you have different elements of your guitar playing that you need to refine with that item. So for instance, a scale sequence like Tom has showing right here, number 1, where he has the number 1 circle, could be the picking hand efficiency. The second one could be fretting hand, let's say thumb position, with that same scale sequence. The third one could be your timing of the notes with that scale sequence. The fourth one, the other way, yes, could be string noise control. The fifth one could be integrating it with another, let's say, scale sequence with a rhythm guitar riff, doing that in time cleanly. Then the sixth one could be integrating it with a 2-hand tapping lick, for example. And again, the core item you are practicing has not changed. What's been changing is the thing you are focusing on. And to an observer, somebody watching you practice, I mean, when you integrate it with other things, they probably tell. But generally, you are just repeating the same thing over and over countless times. So to somebody watching you play who doesn't know what's going on in your head, to them, you are just immersed into playing something over and over. But to you, practicing, your brain is 100% engaged the whole time. And every couple of minutes, or Could be 1 minute, could be 3 minutes, whatever the interval is, doesn't really matter. Your brain is always, every time you change focus, your concentration resets, and it feels like you're practicing something new, even though you're not. And this last piece, feeling like you're practicing something new, even though you're not, that is what makes practicing more engaging and allows you to go longer before you get tired or bored or fatigued.
Yeah, great point. And I've heard people say, I would really love to watch whoever their favorite guitar player is. Let's say Steve Vai. I'd really love to watch Steve Vai practice. And I'm thinking to myself, you'd be pretty bored because you wouldn't know what you were watching. I mean,
Exactly.
you'd watch him play something, and maybe to you it looks and sounds pretty perfect. You may not be identifying or be able to hear many errors or mistakes, but they're all over the place because if they weren't there, he wouldn't be playing it. He wouldn't be there. He's focused on something that is different. So you may not have heard that the articulation of all the notes was not exactly what he wanted. He wanted to accent that note and he didn't. So he's going to do it again to try to accent that note more distinctly. Or maybe there's something with the phrasing, or he's going to want to bend that note just a little bit different way than he intended. So he's going to do it again. To the outside observer, especially one who isn't, let's say, really advanced himself, he wouldn't know what it is that he's listening. Oh, I see he played an arpeggio. Okay, now he played the same arpeggio again, and then he did it again, and then he did it again. And that's what they imagine practicing is. You just do the same thing, and you mindlessly do it a whole bunch of times. And as long as you're relatively in time and it's relatively clean, I guess we're just kind of done, and we move on to something else. But in the mind of, in this example, Steve Vai, but could be any guitar player who knows how to practice for real. What's going on in their head is completely different than what we get to see or hear. Now, if you know what to listen for, you can identify that, oh, I can hear that he's working on articulation here because I can hear the variances on him trying different things. And those inconsistencies probably are not errors. They are simply him trying to optimize the articulation or the phrasing or the nuance of the bend or whatever. So I wanted to just add this point, because you don't know what they're thinking. Now, there's only one place, and this is not a commercial for anything, but there's only one place that I'm aware of where you could actually watch someone practice and know what's going on in their brain because they're telling you. And that one place that I'm aware of is something that you have actually, Mike. You have a course or a product of some kind. I'm not here to sell it to anybody, but I'm just, because we're on this topic, I just remember that you actually have this thing that you sell.
Exactly. Yes, I do. And I was just thinking about that as well. I was going to bring it up too. I have a course on building speed because obviously it's a very popular topic. And one thing I've decided to do, because I have not seen anybody do this anywhere, is I've taken, I think, 3 or 4 guitar licks that are challenging for me to play fast. And after teaching the whole methodology of my way of building speed, I recorded full-length videos of me practicing those licks. And then, because I know that nobody will be able to tell, just like Tom Hess was explaining just now, what's going through my head, I rewatched the videos and I put annotations with text of exactly what I was thinking when I slowed down, when I sped up, why I repeated a certain lick, why I isolated some chunk of it. So every single step, you can watch it and actually not be bored because you have something to focus your attention on beyond just watching me move my fingers around. And that, I think, is that's something I would have paid all the money in the world to have when I was learning to play, because it makes it so much easier then to practice better and get more out of the time that you have. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. And one other thing I want to comment on, Tom Hess, that you said, as far as people who don't quite know what practicing is about and they just repeat things over and over, and they are satisfied. Most people are satisfied too soon with the quality of their playing.
The standard is too low.
Standard is too low. Yes, yes. Let's say you're trying to speed up some exercise, right? And you start at 80 BPM and you play it a few times and you're like, yeah, it's okay. You get up to 90, it's okay. And then you get up to 100, it's okay. Then you get up to 110, and bam, you can't play at 110 at all. And the reason why you can't play at 110 at all is because there were little flaws that were present in your playing, some element of your playing, whether it's some efficiency issue in the picking or the fretting hand or tension control or some sloppiness, string noise or timing or something, or some combination that was present at 80. It was present even more at 90, but you kind of glossed over it because you could still hear most of the notes. Then at 100, it got even worse. And at 110, now all the inefficiencies caught up to you, and you simply can't keep up anymore with the metronome. And so one thing I heard you say this, Tom Hess, at one of the Hess Fest lessons that you taught, and it was something you mentioned in passing, but uh, and I obviously knew this concept, but I always remembered what you said. Somebody was playing some sweep picking thing in front of you and asked you how to play it faster, and you asked them a question. Well, if we took this lick the way you just played it and just made it faster, would you be happy? And I always remember that. And the guy was like, no, I wouldn't be, because he had the realization that, no, the way I'm playing it now isn't good. So I don't want to speed it up. And one challenge I would give to everybody watching is, even if when you have something you want to play faster, before you worry about increasing the metronome speeds, find a tempo where you could play that thing so well you would put it on a record at that speed. And even if it's not as fast as you want it to be, everything else about it is perfect. The timing, the pick attack on every note, string noise control is good. It feels enjoyable to play. And that when you find that tempo, and you do some repetitions of playing at the tempo, then all you have to do is just make that faster. And it becomes so much easier to do, first of all. And secondly, practicing becomes more enjoyable once you have a lot of licks that you could play at those speeds where it sounds good. And even if it's not fast, even hearing somebody play slow at that speed is enjoyable to hear. In fact, there are clips of like John Petrucci warming up backstage. I found some links somewhere. He was warming up backstage, and he was playing one of his solos that he was supposed to play at full speed on stage. Obviously, he was playing at like a third of the speed to the metronome, and it was still enjoyable to listen to because every note was just flawless. And I think having that level, being that strict with yourself when you practice to get to that level of quality with the notes you're playing, speed aside, is a very valuable skill to cultivate. What do you think about that, Tom Hess?
Yeah, I want to come back to something you said was really important. I want to represent the quality of what you play with a rectangle. And then I want to represent the increase of speed playing the same thing at the same quality with another rectangle on top. So I want you to imagine this. Here's the foundation. Here's one skill level playing this, let's say, at half speed. And now we take this at whatever quality it is, and we add on top of, we play it faster up here. Take this, play it faster. So this is the slow speed, and this is the same thing, same lick played at a faster speed. Okay, if this foundation is solid, it's easy to put something else on top. But what if we flip this upside down? This is now you playing the thing at the slow speed. This is the foundation. And now you want to take that and double the speed. And now this is the same thing faster. This is going to fall down because this foundation is too weak. So when you speed it up, this is all garbage. This is just going to collapse. This can't bear the weight of all of this. This is easy. This is hard. Okay. Here's you playing it poorly at a slow speed. Here's you playing it well at a slow speed. Okay. So this kind of goes back to what you were saying, Mike. With a big platform like this, you can stack all kinds of, you can stack a 25-story building on this. But on this, you're not stacking anything. Okay. It's going to collapse. And I think that this visual image helps, I think, people to visualize what you were talking about, Mike, that without the foundation, Yeah, would you really want to speed this up? Not really, because if it didn't sound that great slow, it's not going to sound any better faster. You can't hide the mistakes by putting the notes closer to each other, So I wanted to take a real quick here, a couple of comments here. One is this one. Says, I'm stuck and frustrated. I try many different things and just get jumbled and don't have a focus to improve. This had to do with my practice routine. I'm not sure if that's a statement or a question. Looks like it was maybe intended as a question. This is exactly my issue. So I guess we could interpret this comment in more than one way here, Mike, but maybe you wanted to just kind of speak to that generally.
Yes. So everything starts with having clarity on what it is you want to do, what goal you're trying to achieve. Because from there, once you're clear on that, it becomes clear to then work backward, how to work backwards, and what you should be practicing, what skills you are lacking right now, and what bad habits you have, you may have to undo. And I don't just mean technical bad habits, could be bad habits in how you approach soloing or whatever the case is. So the question is a little bit vague in that we don't know what the goal is. So it is difficult to prescribe anything specific like, oh, you should practice this or you should practice these 5 exercises or whatever. The first thing I would suggest is to think about what would you do on guitar if you could do anything you want? If I could wave a magic wand and make you do whatever you want to do on guitar, what would that look like? Who are some of your favorite players? What are some of the things you admire about them? And how would you use those skills? So everything starts with that. And then from there, you need to know what skills you need to get there. And obviously, of course, we are biased in saying this, but taking lessons would be the fastest and the most effective way to do that. And I would say that even if I wasn't a guitar teacher, you could take lessons with whomever you want, but it's just, a no-brainer thing. So
Well,
that would be
plus,
where I would start.
sorry to interrupt. Plus, I mean, we actually did the thing we're advising other people to do.
Yeah,
You took lessons for years. I took lessons for years. It just speeds up the process. Obviously. I mean,
yeah,
obviously.
yes. So I'm finished answering the question from how I interpreted it. Tom, you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, great comments there, Mike. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit vague on I'm understanding the comment. I'm stuck and frustrated. Okay, so let's take these things separately. I'm stuck and frustrated. Okay, that means you're normal. Okay, that means you're like most people. The people, they can only go so far on their own. They can go farther, of course, with a teacher. Okay, and what you really need is to train the right way. Okay, now if you don't know what that is, or if you don't know how to training in this case means practicing under supervision. That's really what training is. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is you have to define goals, is what Mike said. What exactly do you want to do? Then once we define goals, the next step that has to be determined is, what does your goal require to succeed at it? You see, this is why we cannot give general advice that applies to all people for all goals and all things. Because if you want to do this, here's the list of things that is required to learn and master and become fluent with this. If you want to do this, some of these things for this goal also apply to that one, but not everything does, or not to the same amounts. Okay, maybe this goal requires more knowledge of music theory, or better ability to apply it. Maybe it requires more technique. Maybe it requires a little bit better ear. Maybe it requires better fluency of getting around the fretboard. Okay, so depending upon what the goal is, there's going to be a different set of knowledge and skills required to get there. That has to be defined. If you don't know how to define that, and most people don't because they're not expert guitar players or guitar teachers, you need to get with someone who does know, so they can tell you exactly these are the things you should be doing. Because if you're not doing those things, you're not going to be able to reach whatever the goal is in an efficient way. You're going to waste a lot of time. And the problem with wasting time you can never get it back. You can never get back the time that we waste because we were on the wrong track. We were not even on a track, or we were on it, but we were sitting down, laying down, moving in the wrong direction. You can't get the time back. So you want to make sure you're on the right track. You want to know where you're going, destination, what paths lead there, which ones do not. What do I need to focus on? Now you've got that defined. Now the next step is how. Now that I know where I'm going, what it takes to get there, how do I do these things in a productive, efficient, effective manner? That's the third part. Then once you know that, which is what a great teacher's job is, that's what they'll do for you. I said great teacher. I didn't say average. I didn't say the guy down the street in your hometown who probably doesn't know much about teaching. I'm talking about great teachers, not average ones. So once you got that far, now you've got to get yourself to do those things, or you've got to work with a teacher who will get you to do those things. Once those four pieces are in place, mastering what you want to master, reaching the goals you have is inevitable. That means no other outcome is really possible, or at least not likely. How could you not reach the goal if you know where you're going, you know what is required to get there, you know how to get there, how to do those things, and you're accountable for taking the steps? You're going to get there every single time. Okay. I mean, as long as you got all your fingers, okay, and your IQ is above room temperature, you're going to get there. Okay. A little bit of time, you're going to get there. Without those things, it'll be harder. It'll be more expensive. It'll be more frustrating. And the likelihood of getting there is way lower. So that's kind of what I have to say about that. Yes. Okay. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but at least the choir is listening.
Yes. Great insights there, Tom Hess. So the next thing I would say for getting more out of practicing and how to find it easier to be less lazy is to stop looking for exercises to solve your problems. So it's the new year right now, and YouTube is full of videos of like guitar exercises, outdated guitar drills to stop doing in 2025, or the licks you should practice to get better in 2025, as if like they changed somehow from last year to this year. And so my thinking about that is exercises don't solve your problems. You solve your problems. That's the first thing. And what that means is when you're practicing something, let's say you want to learn Stairway to Heaven solo, and you're stuck on the faster part at the end of the solo or whatever. Well, if you're stuck at that, do you really think that learning some random exercise from some YouTube video is going to help you with that? If you don't know how to master the hard part of the solo and turn that into an exercise that would help you identify why it's hard, understand what's required to make it less hard, and then actually go through the process of making it feel easy, do you really think that practicing a different set of notes is going to do anything? Well, no, it won't, because how you practice is the key to the whole thing. Like, we've been spending the better part of the last hour talking about, Tom Hess and I. And so the advice here is to, the reason why I am so adamant about talking about this is because people who don't understand this, they waste a ton of time looking for random exercises, and every exercise they find a new one gives them hope that somehow it's going to be different when they practice this one versus the other 50,000, licks that they practiced. And you waste time because it doesn't work if you don't understand how to practice. And also it pulls you further and further away from the things you actually want to practice to reach your goals and have fun with the guitar and feel good about your playing. Let's say it's the Stairway to Heaven solo. If you only have, we all have a finite amount of time, period, and we all have even less time to practice. So if you have 24 hours in the day, you have, let's say, an hour to practice. If you cram a bunch of stuff, a bunch of random exercises into that hour that have nothing to do with your goals, it wastes time. It's more likely to make you not want to practice because you realize, all this crap I got to practice, I don't want to do it because it has nothing to do with what I actually want to practice. So this makes you less likely to pick up your guitar, and it's just, a negative snowball of stuff that holds you back from reaching your goals. So the advice here is, when you're stuck at trying to play something, whether it's a technical thing or a general challenge like wanting to improvise guitar solos or write your own songs or whatever your goal is, you're not necessarily going to fix that with exercises. It's learning about the skill you're trying to practice is the secret, if you will. So, Tom Hess, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I do, but it would take us way over. We would be talking for an hour just about that. So I'm gonna refrain from adding much to that, because that could veer us off into another direction. But generally, I agree. Yes, I generally agree with what you're saying. Uh, and I don't want to take us off into
Okay,
a tangent, because
right on.
I will take us up. We'll be chatting for a long time about that.
Understood.
But I do want to maybe take a look at this question here from Jordan. When working on hand synchronization, I assume he means two-hand synchronization, do you find it helpful to practice each hand individually, or should all hand synchronization practice begin and end with both hands working?
Yes, I can talk about that. So the answer is yes, absolutely. It's helpful to practice with each hand individually, and most people don't do enough of it, and that includes myself. As much as I teach and preach doing this, I often find myself doing it, then stopping doing it, and then when I hit some plateau, I realize that I need to be doing more in single hand practice. So two hand synchronization problems can have a bunch of different causes, and one of those causes is simply not knowing what each hand is doing. And for 99 out of 100 guitar players, it's going to be the picking hand, because when we practice, we typically watch our fretting hand because it's doing the most movement. You're changing strings, you're changing positions, or both. And the picking hand very often goes on autopilot after like a couple of weeks of playing, when you learned how to position your hand and how to move your hand, for better or for worse. That is, for everybody, that's like the way they play for the next 50 years. And if you're lucky, i.e., if you're naturally talented, you will figure it out the right way from the start, or if somebody corrects your position early on, then it's going to be less of an issue for you. But for most people, it's a big issue. So if I think back to the last, few thousand students that I've taught, the number one thing I correct in all of them is the picking hand. And so, to get back to answering the question, yes, you want to separate the hands, practice each hand separately, and be ready to be extremely frustrated in that you'll realize you don't know the lick anywhere near as well as you thought you did by doing that. But that's a good thing, because when you spend some time bringing up that weak area in each hand and learn the motions of each hand better, you'll be amazed at how much tighter your synchronization becomes. But then, of course, going back to the point about focus rotation that Tom Hess and I were talking about maybe 20 minutes ago or so, this is a good example of how you might use focus rotation to improve at two-hand synchronization, because you can alternate between focusing on the picking hand by doing literally just the picking motions, covering the strings with this hand, doing the picking motions only. And then after a few minutes, you do the fretting hand motions only, while the picking hand just rests on the strings. And then you spend some time working with both hands. And you will, after doing that for maybe 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you will find your synchronization begins to improve, because you have more clarity on what each hand is doing. So there's a lot more we could say about two-hand synchronization. I'm sure Tom Hess will probably add a few points also, but to answer the question, that's where I will leave it.
Yes. So I have something to add to that. Let's put the question back on the screen here. I'm going to scroll up and find it. Okay. So this was the question. When working on two-hand synchronization, do you find it helpful to practice each hand individually, or should all two-hand synchronization practice begin and end with both hands working? So first of all, let me say I agree with everything that Mike Philippov said, as is usually the case. But I want to just add one little nuance point here. So I drew a little picture of two gears. Okay. So we got FH, that's fretting hand. Okay. And that's the gear, and it's got little teeth, just like gears, right? We're trying to synchronize the hands. We need the teeth of the gears to mesh together. Okay. So we got fretting hand, we got PH, picking hand. Okay. Now, in order for the hands to be synchronized, these teeth of these gears need to line up so that both of these things can spin, right? They're both, just imagine gears, they're turning, right? They're spinning. Okay. And the teeth need to line up. Now, there are various reasons why, just like in actual gears, why they might not line up. Okay. One reason is, well, one possible reason is that one of these two gears simply isn't turning at the same speed as the other one. So if this one is turning faster than this one, it doesn't matter how good the gears are, how good the teeth are, how well you line them up. If they're not moving at the same speed, they're never going to synchronize. Okay. So if one hand is slower than the other, we either need to temporarily speed up the slower hand, or more likely slow down the faster hand, so that when we practice, they're moving at the same speed. So you might slow things down a little bit. Okay. You might also do what Mike was alluding to, which, if it was the picking hand that was slower, you might then isolate the picking hand to work on its individual skills so that it can turn at the same speed as the fretting hand can when playing fast. Okay. But even if we get both of these gears spinning really, really, really fast, where the potential for them to line up is now there, we still need to line up the gears, the teeth of the gears. You still have got to line up. So one is about the speed at which each one is spinning, or the potential speed that they can spin. The other is the timing of the two hands. So as far as the gears spinning, that's going to require individual practice. If this was the one lagging behind, is simply too slow, you, while practicing, need to slow this one down when working on two-hand synchronization, and then separately practice this one, the slow one, in isolation, just a hand only, and trying to build its speed and accuracy. So that's one set of things. Once you get that better, where they're more evenly matched, where they can turn at the same rate, now we have to deal with the teeth of the gears meshing so that they fit. And the way that, one way, there are more than one, that I would work on that is that when you are playing and the two hands are in sync, you can feel the hands are in sync. When you play something and it's perfectly in sync and you're paying attention to how it feels a certain way. Okay. And when the hands are not in sync, it feels different. So what you want to do is play slow enough so you memorize in your mind, what does it feel like when the two hands are perfectly in sync? That feels a certain way. Just like it feels a certain way to play perfectly in time. It's a feeling that you cannot get if your playing is out of time. The only way to get it was when you're right in time. It feels a certain way. Same thing with hands in sync. Feels a certain way. If it feels different, even if you can't hear that the hands are out of sync, you know it's out of sync because it doesn't feel the way in sync playing feels. Okay, so I'm going to stop there in my response to this question. So, but I wanted to address getting the teeth of the gears to line up. That's the feeling of being in sync. And then getting the two gears moving at the same speeds. That is where you might separate the slower one, practicing on isolation, as Mike was talking about. Good stuff here. Mike, I wanted to make sure that we go through whatever else you wanted to share before we take another question.
I think I covered all the main points.
All right, cool.
And I see we have some questions there in the chat. So let's get through some of those.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I saw one
by Tara Avis about forming chords.
Okay. We could take that one.
Yeah. All right, when forming chords, my pinky is usually the last one in position. Is it helpful to form a chord with the pinky first, just to help speed up normal fingering? Okay, I actually would suggest not focusing on any individual finger. Try to form the, so if I bring the guitar up here, form the chord with all the fingers. So there's a bunch of ways we can talk about this. Let's say we've got this chord here. First, just get the fingers in position. And actually, Tom Hess, I learned this one from you specifically. Uh, Form the chord anyhow, some way. Just get the fingers into the position of the chord, and then just practice releasing all the fingers together and bringing them up, bringing them back down to the strings together, so that you get them all working synced up. So you're not focusing on putting the pinky first or the index first or any of the other fingers. You focus on moving them together by fretting the chord and releasing the chord. So do that until you get good and comfortable with this. And the other thing that is helpful to practice is getting the fingers in position from a dead stop. So you got your hand, let's say, down by your side. As you bring the hand in position, practice forming the chord in midair as you bring the fingers to the strings, so that all four of them, in this case, I'm using all four fingers, come down together. And you can do this as slowly as it takes. So you can see I'm taking my time bringing my hand to the guitar. And as I get to about here, that's when my fingers begin to start forming the shape of the chord, so that when I get really close to the strings, all four of them come down together. And if you do this enough times, eventually get to the point where you'll bring the hand to the guitar and the fingers will just quickly form the shape of the chord without needing to do this slowly. But getting the fingers to move together is really the key versus leading with any individual finger. So that'll be my advice there.
Good stuff. I don't really have anything to add to that one. That's a good one. Let's take this one real quick here from Rawi. What are you suggesting to do? I'm struggling with holding the pick according to Tom Hess' system. It's not really a system. It's just this. Okay, but I understand what Rowi's saying. My hand, after a few minutes of playing, holding the pick, I think what he's trying to say is, I try and do it the way Tom Hess talks about, but after a few minutes, I find myself going back to the old way. Okay? Anytime you want to change a habit of any kind, guitar playing habit, any other kind of, wasting your money buying junk habit, whatever the habit is that you want to change, in the beginning, it requires awareness. So here we are. Draw you a picture. Here's the old habit, whatever it is. Here's the new habit, whatever it is. You're trying to do the new habit. So you come over here and you do this. And after a while, your brain starts to not concentrate anymore. It starts to go on autopilot and you kind of drift back over to here. And then you realize after a little while, oh, I'm back doing this thing. What do I do? Well, you become aware. You say, oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. Let's go back over here. And then if your mind wanders again, come back over here, you stop yourself, you make yourself aware, and you go back to doing it this way. And you might have to go back and forth several times until this starts to feel natural and you remember it, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. Okay? That's really no different than changing any habit of any kind in any other part of life. Okay? You get into this, you have to concentrate for a little bit. Then your brain wanders or starts thinking about, it's like if you were meditating or something like that. Okay, I'm not speaking from expertise on meditation, that's for sure. But if you start to meditate and you try to focus your mind wanders and you start thinking about the noise you hear or that you're hungry or whatever. Okay, you just bring your mind back over here. Your mind wanders, you're aware of it, like, oh man, lost track. Bring your mind back over here. You just keep doing that. And to lengthen the time that your brain stays focused on this, you have to focus. Okay. Concentrate on this. Okay. Don't let the brain go to sleep, go on autopilot. Stay focused on what you're doing. Okay. If you drift back over here, you just come back. You just come back. And what will happen is this will start to feel natural and you won't have to focus. You will do it automatically by default because you've now established a new habit. Okay. So yeah, that's my advice for anything really.
Yeah, I would just add to this, if it's difficult to focus on the new habit like Tom Hess was describing, practice in shorter blocks of time. So do, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes, but do it like every hour on the hour. if you can. So especially if you work from home, it's nice. You can set an alarm on your phone, goes off every hour. You practice whatever the new habit is, how you hold the pick or anything else. And this way, it won't be as difficult because focusing on a new habit takes a lot of concentration, way more than playing something you already know pretty well and just focusing on playing it a little bit better in time or whatever the case is. This is like a fundamental thing, takes a lot of concentration. So you can compensate for that by simply doing small bursts of effort spread throughout the day a bunch of times. And then when you practice, here's a key thing: when you practice other things, don't freak out about whatever happens. Let's say the whole pick holding thing. If you hold the pick, if it revert back to your old way of playing for a while, don't panic and don't fight it either. Just let it happen, because if you start fighting it, it's really frustrating, because you take the time away from focusing on other things that you still need to practice while you're focusing on that habit. You can't let the tail wag the dog, so to speak. In this case, you want to focus on the bad habit when it's time to focus on it. And then when the time is gone, you focus on other things, and trust the process. That if you do this enough, it's not going to take very long to change a new habit. If you do it the way Tom Hess was explaining and the way I'm explaining just now, within a matter of like a week or 10 days, you should start to notice that the new way is now much, much more familiar than the old way was. And before you know it, you've switched over to it completely. So I just wanted to add that in.
Great. Let's take one more question. I only understand half of the question. So it is this one here. I get confused with playing knuckles in line with the fretboard. That part I understand. And perpendicular hand motion, I think he's referring to something that you're teaching, Mike. So
Yes.
Let me just clarify what we're talking about on the first half. Okay. So what he's referring to, I believe, is my reference to the knuckle line. So if you make a fist, okay, you've got these knuckles here. Okay. They form a line. Okay. Like this. Okay. Like this. So you want, when you play your guitar, most of the time where it's practical, and it's not practical on everywhere on the guitar, okay, but where and when it's practical, if you look at my knuckle line, okay, it is pretty straight with the guitar, okay. It's maybe not perfectly always parallel, but you want it to basically be, I'm looking at the screen here to see what I'm doing. You want it to be basically parallel. Could be a little like this, but you don't want it out like this. Okay. You don't want it like this, where the knuckle line is, way far. You don't want it looking like this. Okay. Where the knuckles are way over like this. Okay. Because now it's going to be really hard to do something when that knuckle line is shooting off in the space down there. Okay. So that's what I'm referring to when I say the knuckle line. Okay. There are times like when you're bending a string. Okay. You see my knuckle line now is going off in this trajectory, or vibrato. Okay. Now it's going like that. Okay. But when you're playing, let's say, a scale or most licks, okay, the knuckle line is pretty parallel most of the time. As you get high up here, okay, the knuckle line's going to shoot out. Okay. Get rid of that question for a moment. It's going to shoot out more because we're having very limited space. I'm on fret 27 right now. So it's hard to keep it like this because you got the cutout here, it's in the way, etc. But generally speaking, it's like this. Now, Mike, maybe you want to address the second point. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to when he talks about perpendicular hand motion.
I think he's referring to the non-perpendicular hand position. So I agree with everything you said, Tom Hess, and I think that everybody should be able to get into this position when you're playing like in the middle of the guitar from fret 5 to fret 12 or whatever. When you are playing the scale, you should be able to keep the knuckle line parallel, exactly as Tom Hess was just describing and demonstrating. What I found for myself, that when I'm actually playing on the higher strings, the top two strings, my thumb, when it's way too low here, it's easy for it to slip off sometimes. It's not very comfortable and not very stable. And so what I often do when I'm playing just 3-note per string scales, there are exceptions to this, just like Tom Hess was explaining, exceptions to the parallel knuckle line position. When I'm playing 3-note per string scales, I slant my hand a little bit like this. because I can still easily reach the frets in the range of, let's say, even up to here, right? Even up to here, I can do that. Um, what this allows me to do is to have my thumb a little bit higher up and keep the hand more balanced and easily play what I need to play. When I am playing bigger stretches, when I need to do like a diminished seventh arpeggio, then obviously then I 100% do everything Tom Hess was explaining. I let my thumb come way down here so I can do the big stretches with the knuckle line being parallel. So I'm able to do this. But for the specific situation of playing on the top two strings, I often slant my hand like this. And when I get back to the lower strings of the guitar, I get back into the parallel position. So if I play a scale, it usually looks like this. I play sixth string, fifth string, fourth string, third string, and then from the second string, I slant my hand a little bit like this and then revert back to that. That I found to work to help me overcome that specific issue I was talking about with the thumb being too low when it doesn't need to be that low. Anyway, so just to address that point.
Yeah, very good. So here's what's important that people could miss in what it says, because it sounds like, I think to many people, it sounds like, oh, these two guys disagree. There's a disagreement between or opposing pieces of advice. Mike says when he's up here to do this, and Tom Hess says to do this. And I don't know which one of these two people I should be listening to. Does it matter? Is one better? Okay. That's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, what are the core principles, the big ideas that where there is no contradiction between the two different pieces of advice? Okay. And the main thing that you should all take from this is that in both cases, what Mike just described and with what I described is that the hand is open. Okay. So this is a closed hand. If I take my thumb up here and I do this, okay, and I pull my hand away and I show you, this is a closed position. Okay. I cannot move my fingers very freely in this position. I can move them, but they're not free to move. The hand is in a closed, I mean, it looks like my hand's open. It's not. The fingers are curled a lot, and it's a closed position. When I hold my hand this way, my hand is in an open position. I can easily move my fingers, have free range of movement. There's no problem. When Mike goes to his slanting, he's only slanting a little bit. So if you, yes, his index finger is a little bit more curled than mine, but it's not locked up like this. Okay. He's not doing this. Okay. So it's still open. It's slightly on the closer side, but it's open enough that he has free range of movement. That's the point. So the little detail of should your finger be like this or like this or like this, that's way less important. Should the thumb be here or here or here? Forget that. None of that matters. What matters is that the hand is open and the fingers can move freely. Once the hand starts closing and now you are restricted, you're going to lose a lot of speed and you're going to lose a lot of fluency. Okay. So there's sometimes more than one way to do things, but as long as the big principles are in place of the hand being open, being able to move freely with efficient motions, as long as you're not violating those principles, you'll probably be fine if you do it this way or this way or this way. But once you start violating some of those principles, you're in a bad place. You're in a place where you're going to be severely restricted on what you can do, how well you can do it, how fast you can do it, how easily you can do it. So you got to be able to know, and this is what a great teacher will tell you. Great teacher's not going to say, put your thumb there, put your finger there. That's what the guy down the street in your hometown is going to tell you, because he has no clue. Okay. The big idea is, what are the principles involved? Economy of motion, free range of motion. Okay. No restrictions, and reduced tension. If you're in a position where tension starts to rise, that's a major problem. Major problem. Okay. When you have tension, that's unnecessary. So in the way that Mike teaches, even though we have some differences in how we hold our pick and how we pick things, and he doesn't do the thumb muting, I do the thumb muting. He holds his pick like this, I hold it like this. There are these differences, but there is no violation of the principles of economy of motion, efficiency, lowest tension we can get away with and still play with the articulation we want, those things are not violated. And that's what's important. So whether you're listening to Mike or somebody else, it's important that you know, if they're not telling you, it's important that you know what the principles are behind these things. So then you can compare. Well, this guy's telling me to do this, and some other person is telling me to do that. I don't know which one to do. Well, does one of these two things violate the principles that we just talked about? And there are many others besides those three. If it does, you probably don't want to do that. That's crucial. So anything else you want to add to that, Mike, before we wrap this up?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So Mike, I think you have some free stuff for these guys.
Yes, I do. So if you want to get more specific about how to actually put it all together and practice more effectively so it becomes more enjoyable to practice, I have this video masterclass called 5 Guitar Progress Accelerators that gives you 5 very specific and very tactical things you can do while practicing that don't add more time to your practicing. They actually reduce time, allow you to practice less than you do now and improve faster than you are right now. You can check it out for free at this link here and enjoy.
All right. Very good. And I also have something for you guys. It's move over here. It's called Total Guitar Playing Tension Control. So I was just mentioning a moment ago about one of the principles in being able to play freely and fluently and play at your best is to not have lots of tension or any excessive tension when you play your guitar, because that is going to slow you down and make, not only, it's going to literally make you slower, it's going to cut out or cut into your endurance, and it's going to make playing fluently at whatever speed you want to play a lot harder. So this is I think it's like 90-minute masterclass here that I share. It's totally free. Okay. You're going to want to download this and check this out. There's 9 sources, 9 different types of tension that I identify in this training video. And you're going to learn which of any of these 9 you have. Most people have usually 5 or 6. Some have less, some have more. So you're going to learn what kinds or what source of tension do I have? You have. Then in the masterclass, you're going to learn how do I eliminate or at least severely reduce these various sources of tension so that I am more free to do the things I want to do on the guitar, and I don't have this arbitrary, artificial restrictions that I'm putting on myself because I've got this tension I didn't even know I had, and now I can't do the things that I should be able to do, but I can't. So download this for free. You'll be glad that you did. All right, Mike. Let's get Mike back in here. There we go. Thanks for all your time today and all the expertise and advice. I'm sure it was enjoyable for people. And based on the comments in the chat, it seemed like people got a lot out of it. And that's great stuff. If you guys haven't checked out Mike's resource that he mentioned earlier, you definitely want to do that. I can't believe that he gives this away for free. I think he's absolutely nuts. I think he should be charging you like hundreds of dollars for this stuff because I was there when he did it live. So I know how good it is. But anyway, thank you for your time, Mike. Thank you for everyone asking great questions today. It was very enjoyable. Have a great day. Happy New Year, everybody. And we'll see you guys again very soon.
Thanks, Tom Hess. Thanks, everybody. Take care.